Hello and welcome live from New Delhi. You're watching DD India News Hour, India's voice to the world. I'm Gautam Roy, and coming up in the next hour, India's Prime Minister Narendra Modi wraps up his two Gulf nations visit after holding talks with Qatar's Amir Sheikh Tamim bin Hamad Al Thani in Doha. Multiple issues of bilateral, regional and global significance discussed. Japan slips into recession, loses its spot as the third largest economy to Germany. UK also plunges into recession. British Chancellor of the Exchequer says the nation's economy is resilient. NATO defense ministers discuss support to Ukraine and Brussels. France says it will spend 2% of its GDP on defense this year. And India lose the plot at the start of day one of the Rajkot test against England, but Centurions Rohit Sharma and Ravindra Jadeja steady the ship along with a half-century by Shahnawaz Khan on debut. India's Prime Minister Narendra Modi met the Amir of Qatar, His Highness Sheikh Tamim bin Hamad Al Thani, at the Amiri Palace in Doha on Thursday. The two leaders held talks on a wide range of bilateral, regional and global issues. Here's more on the PM's Qatar visit.
After concluding successful UAE visit, Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi visited Qatar, where he held productive meetings with Amir of Qatar, Sheikh Tamim bin Hamad, and key dignitaries. Prime Minister also met Father Amir, His Holiness Hamad bin Khalifa Al Thani, and congratulated him on his visionary leadership that paved the way for Qatar's development over the past decades.
The two leaders thereafter held detailed discussions, first in a delegation level format and then in the restricted format. The topics of discussion included a wide range of areas of bilateral cooperation, including trade partnership, investment cooperation, energy partnership, issues engaged in regional security, cultural affinity, and people-to-people ties. In this, when the two leaders spoke, they spoke about the need for strategic investments and strategic partnership in the field of energy and technology, and to proceed beyond the bilateral relationship in this field.
The Prime Minister also thanked the Amir for taking care of over 8 lakh strong Indian community in Qatar and conveyed India's commitment to further expanding and deepening bilateral cooperation. He invited the Amir to pay an early visit to India.
Prime Minister thanked His Highness the Amir for his support for the welfare of the Indian community, and in this regard expressed his deep appreciation to His Highness the Amir for the release of 8 Indian nationals of Al Dahra Company. We are extremely gratified to see them back in India. Honorable Prime Minister invited His Highness the Amir to pay a visit to India.
Upon arrival late on Wednesday, PM Modi was accorded warm welcome by a large number of Indian diaspora in Doha. He later met his Qatari counterpart, Sheikh Mohammed bin Abdul Rahman Al Thani. The two leaders exchanged views on expanding bilateral cooperation in sectors such as trade, investment, energy, finance, and technology.
And Prime Minister Modi's Gulf nations visit, the two nations that he visited, has been historic in many respects. Not only did it involve the inauguration of Abu Dhabi's first Grand Hindu temple, it also saw the PM meeting the top leaderships of both the countries, inking of key pacts related to trade, investment, connectivity and digital infrastructure with the UAE, and a celebration of the Indian diaspora. Take a look at this report.
A memorable visit to the UAE and Qatar for India's Prime Minister Narendra Modi, where he not only inaugurated the first Hindu temple in Abu Dhabi, he also strengthened ties by meeting the top leaders of both the Gulf nations, apart from delivering the keynote address at the World Government Summit in Dubai and addressing a crowd of 40,000 strong Indians at an Abu Dhabi stadium. The temple inauguration was an unprecedented event, which was the culmination of a generous donation of 27 acres of land by the UAE President Mohammed bin Zayed Al Nahyan. Prime Minister Modi asked the gathering at the temple to give a standing ovation to the UAE top leader, while also remarking about the uniqueness of the gesture on global stage.
आज यूनाइटेड अरब अमीरात की धरती ने मानवीय इतिहास का एक नया स्वर्णिम अध्याय लिखा है। आज अबू धाबी में भव्य और दिव्य मंदिर का लोकार्पण हो रहा है। ये मंदिर पूरी दुनिया के लिए सांप्रदायिक सौहार्द और वैश्विक एकता का प्रतीक बनेगा।
Earlier, Prime Minister's UAE leg of the two-nation tour started on a high note with a warm reception by the UAE President upon his landing and a guard of honor. PM also held bilateral meeting with UAE President, after which 10 pacts were inked between the two sides. These included a bilateral investment treaty. A treaty is expected to be a key enabler for further promoting investments in both countries. MOU on cooperation in the field of electricity, interconnection and trade. MOU opens new areas of collaboration in the field of energy, including energy security and trade. Intergovernment Framework Agreement for India, Middle East, Europe Economic Corridor. The agreement is to build on previous understandings and cooperation on the corridor. The agreement would also foster India-UAE cooperation, further regional connectivity. An MOU on cooperation in digital infrastructure projects. The MOU is both for investments and sharing of technology, skills and expertise on digital infrastructure. There was also an agreement on interlinking of the instant payment platforms of India and UAE, and an agreement on interlinking of domestic debit and credit cards of India and UAE. The visit also saw Prime Minister deliver a keynote address at the World Government Summit in Dubai, where he called out for reform of international institutions and shared his thoughts on the changing nature of governance. Day one of Prime Minister's trip also saw him addressing Ahlan Modi, a 40,000 strong Indian diaspora event at the Zayed Sports City Stadium. PM hailed the contribution of 3.5 million strong Indian diaspora in the UAE's progress and also talked about India becoming the third largest economy in the world by 2030 on its journey to become a developed nation by 2047 when it completes 100 years of its independence. During the Doha leg of his visit, Indian Prime Minister met with three top leaders of Qatar, Amir Sheikh Tamim bin Hamad Al Thani, Father Amir Hamad bin Khalifa Al Thani, and Prime Minister Sheikh Mohammed bin Abdul Rahman Al Thani. He discussed a wide range of bilateral, regional and global issues with the Qatari leadership.
And we'll be talking about the Prime Minister's two-nation Gulf visit a little later in the show as well with our expert guest. But we're moving on for the time being. In spite of strong global headwinds and trade disruptions via the Red Sea, India's merchandise trade deficit narrowed by $17.49 billion in January as exports edged up by 3.1%. According to data released by the country's Commerce Ministry on Thursday, India's exports in the first month of 2024 amounted to $36.92 billion, up from $35.8 billion in January 2023, that is last year. But it was down from $38.45 billion in December 2023, which is the previous month. Now, India's top court on Thursday scrapped electoral bonds and called them unconstitutional and said that they infringe the fundamental right to information of citizens. The Supreme Court ordered the State Bank of India to share details of electoral bonds with the Election Commission of India and asked the ECI to publish them on its website by the 13th of March. The Constitution Bench, headed by Chief Justice D.Y. Chandrachud, delivered this judgment unanimously. Electoral bonds were proposed in the Finance Bill of 2017 and subsequently notified on the 2nd of January 2018. Under the electoral bond scheme, bonds could be bought from the government-owned State Bank of India but could be donated to parties anonymously. And in the neighbourhood, Pakistan Tehreek-e-Insaf, or PTI, led by Imran Khan, called a nationwide protest against election tampering on Saturday and nominated its General Secretary Omar Ayub as the party's candidate for Prime Minister. A six-party alliance led by the PML-N and PPP is anticipated to form Pakistan's next government. Meanwhile, analysts say this coalition resembles the one that overthrew Imran Khan's government in 2022 and shows that the military has continued its power with numerous obstacles. Take a look.
Imran Khan's Pakistan Tehreek-e-Insaf named its General Secretary Omar Ayub as party's prime ministerial candidate on Thursday, following the National Assembly elections in Pakistan that yielded a divided mandate. And just before this, former Prime Minister Nawaz Sharif chose his brother Shehbaz Sharif to lead Pakistan Muslim League Nawaz as party's prime ministerial candidate. A six-party coalition led by PMLN and PPP is expected to form Pakistan's next government, according to post-election understanding. While experts, businessmen and analysts express concern over economic hurdles and maintain, if formed, the new coalition government of Pakistan will face challenges on many fronts.
As the new government, which is considered to be, which is going to be a coalition government, minus the PTI, as it takes the tough decision with regard to reviving the economy, things are going to be difficult and people will not be easily accepting those decisions. So I believe this government has to meet the challenges on multi-front.
Amid the political uncertainties, protesters gathered in Qatar for a sit-in on Wednesday against election results. They blocked all main highways linking Balochistan with other provinces. Several members of Baloch Pashtun and Hazara nationalist parties of the province protested in front of the office of the district returning officer. On Tuesday, shops and public transport services in Qatar came to a standstill as local political parties called for a city shutdown. Ravindra Chauhan's report for DD India.
And still to come on DD India News are: NATO defense ministers discuss support for Ukraine in Brussels. Russian President Vladimir Putin says Joe Biden would be a better US president for Russia than Donald Trump. And North Korea launches multiple cruise missiles in further provocation in the restive region.
How potent is North Korea's nuclear threat? The Korean Peninsula may be on the brink of war. I connect the dots to get you the full picture. Watch Connecting the Dots every Friday at 8 p.m. IST on DD India.
Welcome back. You're watching DD India News Hour. I'm Gautam Roy. NATO defense ministers on Thursday met in Brussels to discuss support for Ukraine and prepare for the upcoming leaders summit. In his opening remarks, Secretary General Jens Stoltenberg said ministers would discuss industrial capacity and increased production of weapons and ammunition. Stoltenberg will once more reiterate the necessity to continue coordinated support for Ukraine in its ongoing war effort against Russia. NATO's initiative came as a direct response to Moscow's increasing cooperation with China, Iran and North Korea.
Today we will take forward the decisions taken at the Vilnius summit last July to further strengthen our deterrence and defense. With new plans, improved command and control, streamlined logistics and strengthened air and missile defense. We will address our defense industrial capacity. We are ramping up production of much needed weapons and ammunition for Ukraine's security and for ours.
Now, France will meet a NATO alliance target to spend 2% of gross domestic product or GDP on defense this year. French Defense Minister Sébastien Lecornu said on Thursday. The minister affirmed these statistics during a NATO defense ministers gathering where Secretary General Jens Stoltenberg mentioned that 18 out of 31 allies are on track to meet the commitment.
Doubler le budget de la défense.
Since his election in 2017, the president has decided to double the French national defense budget. From a budget of approximately 30 billion euros in 2017, we will reach 69 billion euros, which means I can confirm to you that France will reach NATO's 2% of GDP target this year, 2024.
D'obtenir ces 2%, même si c'est un sujet qui...
Let's now take you straight across to Brussels. DD India's Ishan Garg is joining us from there to talk about what's happening there as far as NATO's deliberations are concerned. Hi, Ishan. How resolute is NATO this time around in terms of giving all the support Ukraine needs in the fight against Russia, considering the conflict is now about to complete 2 years and Kyiv's military counteroffensive hasn't been as effective as it was initially expected to be?
Well, absolutely. More support to Ukraine has been front and center for the past 2 days for all the NATO countries and the other allies that they have been working with, which are also part of the Ramstein group. So supporting Ukraine is absolutely crucial, as NATO's General Secretary Jens Stoltenberg says that defense of Ukraine is not only critical for that country itself, but it's also critical for the wider defense architecture of the European Union and the European countries as well. Now, in terms of advancing more support, we have seen a couple of interesting announcements coming from NATO. The NATO General Secretary has said that ramping up of ammunition is going to be absolutely critical because Ukraine right now is in a crucial position where it's going to lack an ammunition supply. Now, you would remember that EU countries had decided, or rather agreed on sending 1 million artillery shells by the end of March, but they have now said that they're not going to hit that target. But NATO says that they are still looking to ramp up production domestically as well as more procurement from other countries outside. The announcement has come that Germany, for example, is going to set up a factory in Lower Saxony region where they will be pumping out 200,000 artillery shells every single year when running at full capacity. Jens Stoltenberg has also announced that 1 million drones are also going to be supplied to Ukraine, and now the idea would be that all of these combined together will help Ukraine in its war against Russia. But of course, there is some sense of frustration within the NATO as well that not enough support is coming from the USA. Jens Stoltenberg has said that the fact that $60 billion in funding for Ukraine is still stuck in the US, that means that the effects of that can already be seen in Ukraine, and he said that he hopes that that money will be unlocked soon for Kyiv.
All right. And France has said it will meet the 2% of GDP spend criteria on defense this year. How many other NATO members are willing to step up as well, considering Donald Trump's threat to not stop Putin's forces if he chooses to invade a member who's not been coughing up?
Well, the question of more spending has loomed very large over the meetings for the past couple of days. We have seen comments coming in from US presidential hopeful Donald Trump criticizing many NATO countries for not spending enough on their own defense. But at the same time, we saw Jens Stoltenberg said that for the very first time, 18 NATO members are spending 2% of their GDP on defense, and they are going to invest a further $380 billion into defense just this year. And it's now meant that as a collective GDP. 2% of it is already being spent by NATO countries, even though some countries individually are falling short of it. So the NATO countries are committing to spending more, but it remains to be seen how long it will take for different countries to chip in equally, because we have seen that the Baltic nations, the countries which are closer to the Russian border, they are spending a much higher percentage of their GDP than the countries which are further westwards.
All right. So there some effort to at least meet the kind of requirements that are there for NATO members as well, and to answer to Donald Trump too. Thanks a lot for joining us, Ishan Garg. Now, US Vice President Kamala Harris arrived at Munich airport on Thursday ahead of the annual Munich Security Conference scheduled to kick off on Friday. The US Vice President and Secretary of State Antony Blinken face a tough task at the conference, reassuring allies that the United States remains committed to defending their security. Harris and Blinken are set to attend the annual security gathering less than a week after Republican presidential frontrunner candidate Donald Trump said he would not defend NATO allies who failed to pay their bills. And US Secretary of State Antony Blinken has arrived in the meantime in Albania on Thursday to reaffirm ties with that country, a crucial partner in the Balkans. Blinken will be meeting top officials of Albania to discuss regional stability with a focus on bolstering relations and supporting Ukraine against Russian aggression. The officials will address rising tensions between Kosovo and Serbia. During his visit, Blinken will also acknowledge Albania's support during the Afghan crisis and meet Afghan refugees and Albania's humanitarian workers. Following his visit to Albania's capital, Tirana, Blinken will head to Germany for the Munich Security Conference. During a joint news conference in Poland on Thursday, British Foreign Secretary David Cameron and Polish Foreign Minister Radosław Sikorski urged the US Congress to approve an aid package for Ukraine. Poland and Britain have been among Ukraine's strongest supporters in the ongoing war against Russia. US President Joe Biden is pushing the Speaker of the House of Representatives, Mike Johnson, for a vote on the funding bill for Ukraine that's opposed by former President Donald Trump.
I would like you to treat this as a joint appeal to the US House of Representatives and personally to Speaker Mike Johnson to put the aid package for Ukraine to a vote.
Applaud what the EU's already done for Ukraine, but because of their strength and power in the world, we really do want to see Congress pass that money to support Ukraine economically, but crucially militarily in the months ahead.
Russian President Vladimir Putin has said Joe Biden would be a better US president for Russia than Donald Trump and dismissed concerns over his counterpart's age and acuity for the role. Asked in a state television interview to choose between Biden and Trump, Putin said the US leader was more experienced and predictable, adding that Russia would work with any US leader who wins the trust of the American people. The Russian president's comments came a day after Biden accused Trump of having bowed down to a Russian dictator as he urged Republicans in Congress to defy Trump and back more funding for Ukraine.
Biden, he's more experienced, more predictable. He's an old school politician. But we will work with any US leader who the American people have confidence in. When I met Biden in Switzerland, yes, it was 3 years ago, but it does not matter. Even then people were saying that Biden was incompetent. But I did not see anything of this sort. Yes, he kept looking at his papers, but to be honest, I kept doing the same. So there was nothing peculiar.
Politics is sometimes the art of not saying what you mean and not meaning what you say. Now, in the ongoing conflict, Israel plans to press ahead with the offensive against Hamas in Rafah after allowing civilians to vacate the area. Meanwhile, several countries, including representatives of the Arab League, have urged Israel not to press ahead with a possible military operation in Rafah.
Amidst the conflict between Israel and Hamas, Israel has decided to proceed with their ground operations in Gaza's southern city of Rafah. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu said that Hamas should abandon its demands.
I insist that Hamas should abandon its delusional demands, and when it does, we will be able to move forward.
Several countries have urged Israel to not press ahead with the possible military operation in Rafah. Representatives of the Arab League and German Foreign Minister Annalena Baerbock have also expressed their concern regarding the same.
From our perspective, we believe that the Security Council should shoulder its responsibility and act immediately on stopping the fighting, saving Rafah from this looming catastrophe.
Israeli military also continued operation in the Nasser hospital in the southern Gaza city of Khan Yunis.
We have credible intelligence from a number of sources, including from released hostages, indicating that Hamas held hostages at the Nasser hospital in Khan Yunis, and that there may be bodies of our hostages in the Nasser hospital facility.
Israel also carried out extensive airstrikes on villages across southern Lebanon in response to Hezbollah's deadly rocket attack on northern Israel. Bureau Report, DD India.
And in another part of Asia, tensions in the Korean Peninsula are at their highest point in years after North Korean leader Kim Jong-un accelerated his weapons demonstrations at a record pace and issued provocative threats of nuclear conflict with South Korea and the US. Here's more.
North Korean leader Kim Jong-un oversaw the test of a new surface-to-sea missile on Wednesday. He visited a major munitions factory where he called for a boost in weapons production, according to the state media. Kim said South Korea is violating the North's sovereignty by insisting on Northern Limit Line (NLL), the maritime demarcation line between the two Koreas. South Korea's military said North Korea had fired multiple cruise missiles in waters off its eastern port of Wonsan, and the test was Pyongyang's sixth missile launch event of the year. They also mentioned that all this took place in recent weeks before an April general elections in South Korea. In the midst of tensions, Japan's top government spokesperson has said North Korea is strengthening its ability to mount a surprise missile attack. He added that Japan would work closely with its allies, the US and South Korea, to monitor the situation.
By launching missiles from various platforms such as submarines and vehicles-mounted launch pads, we believe North Korea is making it difficult to identify and detect signs to strengthen its surprise attacks capabilities.
Meanwhile, North Korea's state news agency said the influential sister of North Korean leader Kim Jong-un said there is no impediment to closer ties with Japan, and there may come a day Japanese Prime Minister Fumio Kishida visits Pyongyang. Earlier, United States supported Japan's efforts to hold talks with North Korea and hopes any dialogue would seek to resolve issues ranging from regional security to human rights. Rahul Upadhyay's report for DD India.
Let's now take a look at some of the other updates coming in from around the world. South Korea has established diplomatic relations with Cuba for the first time in 65 years. The two countries' representatives to the UN exchanged diplomatic notes in New York on Wednesday, agreeing to open diplomatic relations at the ambassadorial level. Italian farmers on Thursday staged a noisy protest with their cowbells to ask for the government's help as they face low prices for produce, rising costs and cheap imports. The protest also opposes constraints linked to the European Union's policies against climate change. Japan has found one of its newest species, the skeleton panda sea squirt, in the island of Kumejima. The microscopic sea creature measures up to 2 centimeters and has a skeleton-like body structure with black spots that mimic a panda's. Apollo's chariot fountain returned to its base in the gardens of the Palace of Versailles on Thursday after more than a year of restoration work. The metal structures that for more than 3 centuries had been supporting the fountain, consisting of 13 statues and weighing 30 tons, had rusted, leaving the fountain in need of critical remedial work. And still to come on DD India News are discussion with experts on Prime Minister Modi's two-nation visit in West Asia. Japan and the UK face a recession. Japan loses spot as the world's third biggest economy. And the European Commission has announced that the Eurozone will experience slower growth in 2024 than initially projected. India that invents. India that innovates. India that excites. India that invites. Land of possibility. Teeming with opportunities. Watch India Ideas each Thursday, 8 p.m. only on DD India. Welcome back. You're watching DD India News Hour. I'm Gautam Roy, and before we go any further, another look at our top stories. India's Prime Minister Narendra Modi wraps up his 2 Gulf nations visit after holding talks with Qatar's Amir, Sheikh Tamim bin Hamad Al Thani in Doha. Multiple issues of bilateral, regional and global significance discussed. Japan slips into recession, loses its spot as the 3rd largest economy in the world to Germany. The UK also plunges into recession. British Chancellor of the Exchequer says the nation's economy is resilient. And NATO defense ministers discuss support to Ukraine in Brussels. France says it will spend 2% of its GDP on defense this year. Let's now take you back to our top story, which is about Prime Minister Modi's 2 Gulf nations visit. He's concluded that with a quick trip to Doha in Qatar, and before that he was in the UAE. Well, joining us now to talk about it, we have former senior diplomat Prabhu Dayal. Ambassador Dayal, good evening to you. What do you make of this trip? It's been unprecedented, where we've seen Prime Minister Modi unveiling, inaugurating the large temple, the first such temple in Abu Dhabi. We've seen bilateral talks being held where there were 10 pacts. But let's also talk about Qatar, where he's met all the top 3 leaders in that country and held talks with them on bilateral, regional and global issues as well. How important is that in the context of the recent developments bilaterally as well as in that region itself?
Well, Gautam, first of all, thanks for having me on your show. Let me mention that I served as Consul General in Dubai from 1994 to 1998. At that time, there were 2 small Hindu temples in Dubai, but one could never have even imagined in one's wildest dreams that a Hindu temple would be allowed to come up in Abu Dhabi. Because Abu Dhabi was considered very conservative and an orthodox Islamic emirate. Prime Minister Modi has successfully turned around India's relationship with the United Arab Emirates to the extent that now the Emir of Abu Dhabi, the ruler of Abu Dhabi, Sheikh Mohammed bin Zayed Al Nahyan, has himself gifted 27 acres of land for the construction of this magnificent Hindu temple. It is because of Prime Minister Modi's strenuous efforts that an achievement like this has been made possible. Now, let me mention that Prime Minister Indira Gandhi had visited the UAE in 1981. But after that, no Indian Prime Minister visited UAE till Shri Narendra Modi became Prime Minister of India. He became Prime Minister in 2014. The very next year, in 2015, he visited the UAE. And since then, he has visited 6 more times, so a total of 7 visits. And the president of UAE, Sheikh Mohammed bin Zayed Al Nahyan, has also visited India 4 times. Once as chief guest for the Republic Day Parade, recently as the chief guest for the vibrant Gujarat Summit, and also as a special invitee to the G20 summit last year. So Prime Minister Modi has built such a strong friendship with the UAE president, who's also the ruler of Abu Dhabi, and they call each other brothers. It's a brotherly relationship, and the results are not difficult to discern. We see on your screen this magnificent temple. We see the priests of the BAPS temple. We see Prime Minister talking to the top-level UAE leadership. So that emphasizes how the partnership has become extremely comprehensive. You would recall that 2 years ago, India and the United Arab Emirates had signed the Comprehensive Economic Partnership Agreement. And since then, both sides have been working towards strengthening this relationship. And during this visit by Prime Minister Modi, there was this agreement signed on promoting bilateral investment. There was an agreement on the linking of digital payment systems and card payments. There was an agreement on promoting infrastructure cooperation. So it is such a comprehensive achievement, both in terms of the Hindu temple, which has been inaugurated by Prime Minister, as also in terms of the extremely significant and meaningful agreements which the two sides have signed. Now, let me speak a little bit on the visit to Qatar. You know, we were all deeply anguished when news broke out about the fact that 8 of our retired, highly decorated naval officers who were working in Qatar for an Oman-based company, Al Dahra, that they had been arrested. Most of us were in shock, and India was really very upset about the detention of these people. Prime Minister Modi was the game changer. Of course, government made a lot of efforts at all levels. But when Prime Minister Modi met the Emir of Qatar on the sidelines of the COP28 summit in Dubai in November, December, that changed the equation. We could see their body language. We could see the warmth and friendship between them. And the results came very quickly. Within a few weeks of their meeting, the death sentences were commuted to life imprisonment. And within a few weeks of that, the 8 sailors have been released and they have returned back to India. So what a joyous celebration it is. We are all so delighted to see our retired, decorated naval officers come back.
Certainly.
And I repeat, this happened because of the Prime Minister's personal initiative to meet the Qatar Amir on the sidelines of the COP28 summit. Now, once their release took place, the Prime Minister's visit to Qatar was announced, and I think the signal was not difficult to see. He wanted to thank the Emir of Qatar, because the Prime Minister is a person who leaves no stone unturned to convey gratitude and to build further on that event. So his visit has been very momentous, very significant.
Yes.
And a number of areas have been
yes,
identified
but the gratitude has not really been spelled out in as many words when the statements are released by the External Affairs Ministry about the Prime Minister's meetings with the leadership in Qatar. The other thing that has not been mentioned, both in the statements that have emerged after his meetings where Doha and where Abu Dhabi and Dubai were concerned, were any talks related to the crisis, the conflict that is going on between Israel and Hamas, what's been happening in Gaza. And both these countries have a role as far as addressing the matter is concerned when it comes to the efforts to come to a ceasefire and the return of hostages. Do you think that is also something that is in a way deliberate, but that is a subject that has not been left untouched?
Well, Gautam, let me tell you that everything which is discussed doesn't come out into the public domain. It doesn't have to come out in the public domain. There are a lot of discussions which are in camera and which are only kept confidential and secret, and they are made available to those who matter within government. Even within government, such discussions are not a matter of public knowledge that everyone, for instance, in the External Affairs Ministry would know. These are confidential discussions. So I wouldn't be surprised if the issue of the Israel-Hamas war was discussed. But if it has not been made public, I think that is for good reasons.
Yes,
Let
the
me
Foreign
also
Secretary mentioned in the context of the meetings in the UAE that the matter was taken up, it was discussed. But not in the case of Qatar.
Well, you know, maybe the two sides would have felt it necessary to discuss, but not to make the matter come out into the public domain, because it may have been very confidential in nature. I don't know whether this matter was discussed, but if it was discussed and it has not come out in the public domain, it is for good reasons. It often happens in diplomacy. Let me mention that with Qatar also, I see the steady development of relations. We can again see on your screen the body language between the two leaders, the warmth between them. And I'm very confident that the relationship with Qatar will also grow by leaps and bounds. And Qatar is a very important country in the West Asian region. It is extremely important as an exporter of natural gas. And our requirements are colossal. So we have recently signed an agreement for a long-term supply of natural gas. I think it will bring us natural gas till 2048 or some year like that. The point is that with Qatar's help and with this deal, we will be able to meet our requirements quite substantially. And you know, India is trying to shift from a petroleum-based economy to a gas-based economy. And this is because the pollution is much lesser if natural gas is used. So if we have a good relationship with Qatar, then this will take our efforts to greater heights. Let me also mention that both UAE and Qatar are also important from the point of view that we have a huge diaspora there. I understand that in UAE, our diaspora is about 3.5 million. And in Qatar, it is about 0.8 million. Very substantial figures. And in the entire GCC region, it is about 8.8 billion.
Yes.
8.8 million. So these are substantial numbers. You can see the Prime Minister on your screen meeting the Indian diaspora.
Yes, the Indian diaspora is about 27% of the Qatari population. So that puts the number in perspective.
Which is a very significant number, Gautam. And I think our diaspora is a very important factor when we work out foreign policy. You know, people come first. We have to look after their interests. They work there. And they are considerably dependent, considerably in every sense.
Certainly, and we'll see more unfolding as well in the coming days. We can be sure of that. Thank you so much for joining us and talking about it, Ambassador Dayal. Now, Japan has lost its spot as the world's third largest economy to Germany after its economy shrank for 2 quarters in a row. The recession has been attributed to weak domestic demand and a significant fall in the value of the yen. The official data said that the country's GDP contracted by a worse than expected 0.4%. This was in the last 3 months of 2023 compared to a year before. This has come after the economy shrank by 3.3% in the previous quarter. Some economists also believe that the next January-March GDP data will also come out weak. This is due to negative impacts from the Noto Peninsula earthquake and low production as well as exports.
I think the fact that Japan fell to 4th place for global economic size is a more serious matter than people originally expected. The reason for the 4th rank slide is foreign exchange rate. In 2023, the average of the dollar-yen rate was 140.5 Japanese yen against $1 US. This indicates a historical weak yen, which makes the value of the yen weaker and a big reason why Germany overtook Japan. I think the next January-March GDP will also come out weak. One, because there are negative impacts from the Noto Peninsula earthquake that happened in the beginning of this year. I believe this would have also sort of impact on inbound tourism too. We also had an issue with automobile makers, which could influence other firms and see a decline in automobile production. The January-March GDP period is not over yet, but production and exports could be stagnant.
And another big economy that has plunged into recession is the UK. Britain's economy slipped into a recession during the latter part of 2023. This comes as a challenge for Prime Minister Rishi Sunak as he aims to garner voter support ahead of an anticipated national election later in 2024. The country's gross domestic product contracted by a more severe than anticipated 0.3% in the final 3 months of the year, following a 0.1% shrinkage between July and September. Britain's economy has been experiencing stagnation for nearly 2 years, with the Bank of England anticipating a slight improvement this year. And as the news surfaced, UK Finance Minister or Chancellor of the Exchequer was quick to come to the rescue. He stressed that the economy is more resilient. He said the growth rates were expected low as the UK government prioritised tackling inflation.
We always expected growth to be weaker while we prioritise tackling inflation. That means higher interest rates. And that's the right thing to do because you can't have long-term healthy growth with high inflation. The underlying picture here is an economy that is more resilient than most people predicted. Inflation is coming down. Real wages have been going up now for 6 months.
Now we'll have to see if the Bank of England will lower rates to bring up growth. The European Commission has also announced on Thursday that the Eurozone economy will experience slower growth in 2024 than initially projected due to declining purchasing power from rising prices. However, inflation is also expected to be slower in 2024.
The latest data confirmed that the EU economy barely expanded throughout 23, and prospects for the first quarter of 24 remain muted. Second, the conditions for a rebound are still in place. Price pressures have moderated faster than previously expected, and energy prices are now substantially lower. As a result, while credit conditions are still tight, markets now expect the loosening cycle to start earlier.
And closer home, Sri Lanka Central Bank on Thursday has indicated that the surge in inflation is to be temporary, with expectations of a return to the targeted 5% in the medium term. The central bank mentioned this in a monetary policy report for the month of February released on Thursday. The announcement comes as the island nation's economy shows signs of stabilization following a severe financial crisis seen over the last 2 years. The central bank attributed the rise in inflation to the hike in value-added tax from 15 to 18% in January this year. Further, the report added that the annual economic growth is expected to turn positive in 2024 and gradually reach its potential over medium term. And still to come on DD India News Hour. Chipmaker Nvidia overtakes Google parent Alphabet as the third most valued company in the US markets. India manages to put 326 for 5 on board its stumps on day 1 with centuries from Rohit Sharma and Ravindra Jadeja.
We just don't bring you the news as it unfolds. We get to the heart of the matter.
We don't just present facts. We demystify complex social, political and economic events.
We break stories that shape the world's present and future because you deserve the truth.
I am Tanvi Taneja from New Delhi.
I'm Ollie Barrett from London.
I'm Nick Harper from Washington, D.C.
Join us on DD India Global Monday to Friday at these times.
Welcome back. You're watching DD India News Hour. I'm Gautam Roy. Now, the 16th World Social Forum has kicked off in Kathmandu with a focus on fostering collaboration among various groups opposing neoliberal globalization. The event began with a solidarity march and is expected to attract around 40,000 participants from 92 countries. The event aims to address pressing issues such as economic inequality, climate justice, labor rights and gender equality through dialogue and action. chipmaker Nvidia overtook Google parent Alphabet as the third most valued US-based company on Wednesday. The Santa Clara, California company's stock rose 2.46%, putting its value at $1.825 trillion, while Alphabet's stock climbed 0.55%, leaving it at a value of $1.821 trillion. This comes a day after Nvidia ended a session with a market capitalization above Amazon's for the first time in 2 decades. Amazon's market capitalization was $1.776 trillion after its stock rose 1.39% on Wednesday. Nvidia controls about 80% of the high-end artificial intelligence chip market that has boosted its stock price 47% this year after it more than tripled in 2023. Nvidia's quarterly report next Wednesday will be among Wall Street's most closely watched for the week. Metal Finishers Association of India has organized a 3-day conference and exhibition on surface finishing in Delhi NCR. Indian Surface Finishing 2024 was inaugurated by President of Metal Furnishers Association of India, Sunil Goyal. The event started on the 14th of February and will go on till the 16th. Nearly 100 reputed companies are showcasing their products and services and new technologies. Technical conference will have nearly 43 papers presented by speakers from across the world. Addressing the event, President of MFAI said that India is a bright star and rising in the world economy. With the theme of evolving media ecosystem, innovative, immersive and sustainable broadcasting, Indian Minister for Information and Broadcasting Anurag Singh Thakur inaugurated the Broadcast Engineering Society Expo 2024 in Delhi. The Chief Executive Officer of Prasar Bharati, India's public broadcaster, emphasized that despite media evolution and heightened competition, there is always room for good content. Listen in.
The times are changing. We have a much greater number of competing channels, whether it is radio, whether it is Doordarshan, or even the emerging technologies like streaming. So they are all competing for the attention of the audience. But at the same time, the requirement of good quality content always remains, and the fittest, the persons, the agencies which produce the best quality content, which is able to provide this education, entertainment and information, they are the ones who will take the biggest part of the cake. Prasar Bharati has its own stature in the industry. For the last 2 years running, Doordarshan and Akashvani have been ranked as among the top-rated media news brands in the country. And we will continue to build on this and also scale greater heights in the days to come.
Let's now get you some sporting updates as well. Now, Captain Rohit Sharma and middle-order batsman Ravindra Jadeja smashed defiant hundreds to drag India out of the doldrums and into a comfortable 326 for 5 on the opening day of the third test against England at Rajkot. India were reeling at 33 for 3 inside the opening hour after Mark Wood proved the value of extra pace on a docile track. Rohit and Jadeja rebuilt the innings with a 204-run stand to drag the hosts back into the contest. Jadeja was batting on 110 at stumps, his fourth test 100, with night watchman Kuldeep Yadav on 1 at the other end. Rohit's stellar 131 contained 3 sixes, 14 fours and plenty of drama. Debutant Sarfaraz Khan shrugged off early jitters and raced to a 48-ball 50 before his entertaining knock of 62 was cut short. The 5-match series is poised at 1-1. And the Indian men's team finished second in Group A after losing 3-2 to the People's Republic of China in its Badminton Asia Team Championships 2024 in Shah Alam City of Malaysia. Having already confirmed a spot in the quarters after beating Hong Kong, China on Wednesday, India fielded a makeshift team without Satvik Sairaj Rankireddy and Chirag Shetty and former world number 1 Kidambi Srikanth. The Indian badminton team drew first blood with world number 7 HS Pranoy trumping Wang Hongyang by 6-21, 21-18 and 21-19 scoreline in the first singles match. M.R. Arjun and Dhruv Kapila then lost the second doubles rubber against Chen Bo Yang and Lu Yi 21-15, 19-21 and 21-19 before Commonwealth Games champion Lakshya Sen restored India's lead by defeating Li Lanshi 21-11 and 21-16. However, India lost the following 2 matches to lose the tie. The result sees China advance to the quarters as the Group A winners. The quarter-final matches are scheduled on Friday. And that's all we have for this edition of DD India News Hour. But let us know your thoughts about the news of the day. You can connect with us on Facebook, X as well as Instagram. We'll be back with more news and updates as they break here on DD India. I'm Gautam Roy. And from all of us here in Delhi, thanks for watching DD India News Hour.